everybody, Jefferson Webster here, and today I want to talk about video games. Is Baseball Stars on the NES the best baseball game on the NES? Years ago I never would have questioned this, but more recently I've seen reviews and video game lists that have it in the middle of the pack with respect to sports games and baseball games, and I'm surprised by this. And perhaps I'm just being nostalgic about the game, thinking back to when I played it as a child. I think a lot of us advocate passionately about things that we admired when we were a child. Some people, will go down the path of, In-N-Outburg is the greatest place, or Portillo's, or some childhood-driven affinity. And it's likely not as amazing as you remember it because you're being subjectively nostalgic about it. And nostalgia is always going to create bias. So I wanted to revisit this game and find out if it was as amazing as I remembered as a kid. So let's pop the hood on this one and find out. Baseball Stars on the NES. I spent many hours upon hours as a child playing this game. And I think the more I think about it, the possible misconception or misinterpretation with this game might be in how people approach it. This isn't a pick up and put down game. This is a long tail game where you have to invest time. It's really more like an RPG. And if you don't invest time in the game, then I understand why it may fall flat for you. So what's the story with this game? Well, it was developed by SNK in the 80s, and it was first released on the arcade console as a two-player co-op machine. And it was later ported to the Neo Geo, the home console. I've actually played the arcade version of this, but I've never played the home console Neo Geo.
Help me, I'm poor.
In 1989, it was ported to the NES. And I remember distinctly, my brother and I were on a shopping trip with my mom, and we saw the game, we investigated the back, we were looking at some of the attributes of the game, some of the details, and at that time, video games were just as expensive as they are today. I believe the game was $50, and in the late 80s, that's a lot of money. And you had to take the risk because there were a lot of bad NES games out there. I mean, go on YouTube, there's plenty of reviews of bad NES games. So we really took a chance in trying to get this game. So my brother and I pooled our money together, and our mom pitched in the rest, and we ended up with the game. So what's unique about the game? Let's talk about some of the game. Once you fire the game up, you're going to notice 4 game modes that are available to you and 4 that are blacked out. The 4 blacked out will become available after you make a team. So you've got League Play, View Team, Versus, and Make Team. So let's go into each one of these and figure out what these are about. Versus is basically an exhibition mode, and if you go into that, there's a 1-player, 2-player, and computer play option. The 1-player option is typically what we would use when we were kids because you make the most money when you beat the computer. 2-player is an exhibition mode where no one makes money, so it doesn't really make sense to play this. And computer play is a simulation where you can watch the game, the 2 computers play each other. I don't know why you do that, but it's available to you. So this is in the 1-player mode. We would typically play the American Dreams because that's the way you can make the most money in the game. Now, if you go to League Play, this is where you can actually make money playing another player. You can have up to 6 teams, and each team you can play up to 25 times. So at a max, you could play up to 125 games. And the cool thing about League Mode is it keeps statistics like batting average, home runs, wins, saves, things like that. So you can kind of get a tally of what's going on and almost simulate a real Major League Baseball season. View Team gives you the ability to look at the teams that are in the league or in the game, your made teams and the computer teams, and look at rosters. And the American Dreams were kind of the big draw to this game. The game has no Major League Baseball affiliations. However, these players, you could speculate, are Major League players. So you've got Joe DiMaggio, Hank Aaron. This, for example, should be quote-unquote Sandy Koufax. And you have a player picture in the upper left, the amount of money the player is worth. He's a pitcher, he's right-handed, he throws overhand, and he's totally maxed out on his abilities. So he had 76 points. As a hitter, he has 22 points. He's a terrible hitter. But it gives you an idea. Each one of these teams has those players, and you can power them up. Another innovative thing about this game is there's a team of females, which I don't think had ever been done at the time. And the same thing here. They've got a picture. She's quite the looker. But you get the idea. So right now I'm going to go and I'm going to make a team. And when you go make a team, you can have different slants on the players, like good defense, fast runners, and basically this kind of lists those attributes a little bit, not across the team, but to certain players, they might have more attributes in that area. So I'm going to go through and create the Chicago Cubs. And this game, as I mentioned, had no Major League Baseball affiliation or licensing, but you could go in and create a team if you wanted. So for example, I can go in and I can create the Chicago Cubs and I can insert the 2018 rosters on this team, which makes the replayability of this game fantastic. And then you've got a limited amount of logos that you can pick for your team. Fortunately, there's a C here, so that works for me. A good go-to is that cat for whatever reason. So once you create a team, you have the ability to hire players, fire players, remove a team. And then if I actually create another team, I'll have the ability to trade players. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Just create a generic team and generic logo. And that gives you a general sense of what you can do. And one thing you need to know when you create a team is that they're going to suck. This is the best pitcher on my team. He's worth $20,000. He has 35 points right now for pitching. But luckily, I can power him up. I have $31,000 to power him up. You buy these points. Once you buy them, the money is gone. And then you have to go out and earn money through either playing the computer in versus mode or players and the computer in league play. Fortunately, there are a number of different strategies that can help you win games and also earn money faster. So I will be going into each one of those. Now, this is the part of the video where I would have a cool 80s montage with music showing you how I name the players, the positions, and power them up. But I don't have that, so you get what you pay for. The first method and easiest one is Game Genie. I didn't have one of these when I was a kid because we couldn't afford it, but I do now. So this code will actually give you the ability to power up your guys without the limitation of winning games and earning money. The next method you can use is create a super team. These were a bit obscure, and I believe we found out about these in Nintendo Power, but if you go into Make Team mode, you put in the following pattern, it will give you the ability to create a team of all women, and they are mostly powered up, which is super helpful in the very beginning. It's going to ask you a question, what is a wren? And you just need to type in a bird with a period on the top line. And once you've done this, it will ask you another question and you need to respond. But once all of that is completed, it enables you to complete the process and have your fully powered up female team. So when isn't it? So for this one, you need to type in when it is. For some reason, this always reminded me of some sort of 70s soul funk movie. Like I picture Isaac Hayes music and somebody walks up, when isn't it? When it is. I don't know why, but I digress. So you pop this in there, just like this, and it will enable you to name the team whatever you want right now. So I'm just going to name them the Turtles, and I'm going to give them a generic T logo here. And we will go in and look at them, and you'll notice that they're mostly powered up. So you're going to have a pretty good team right from the jump. So that is how you get the women's super team. Now, if you want to do a men's super team, it's a different code, and I've included that here as well. So this is the path you're going to use to get the all-men super team. And basically, it's going to do the same process, and you're going to go through that. So this one doesn't ask you what is a wren. It just starts out with when isn't it, and you type in when it is, and that will repeat the process to have an all-men's super team. This is a method that we came up with growing up as kids, but you're going to watch Chris Bryant just smack an absolute blast off the wall for a hit. You know, you're thinking, that should be a double. Well, if you have a 13, 14, or 15 in speed in this game, there are ways to get an inside the park home run every time as long as you can time it right in between throws. So it takes a little bit of practice, but once you get it, you're golden. So a lot of people have heard about this one. I'm going to plunk old Pete Rose over here. And then you simply just do a pickoff move to first, throw it to second, take B to pull your guy off, and then throw it right into center field. Waiting is your center fielder, and boom, he's out. Works every time. So here's another trick. I'm in a bases loaded bind, and if you throw inside and then throw a strike on the outside corner. So inside and outside, you can get a quick strikeout. I don't recommend this because your pitcher kind of loses his arm. They were actually thinking about pitch counts, which is amazing, but it does work. The next method is going to be creating a league of just player teams, no computer teams. And you're going to want to create the American Dreams and then your team. And then essentially by using both controllers, you will be able to make money beating the American Dreams. Why the American Dreams? Because they pay the most money. You don't make as much as you do beating them in versus mode, but it's a free victory nonetheless. This method is probably more time consuming than the others, so keep that in mind. At some point, you're going to max out all your guys from a powering up them perspective, so it's always good to try to maximize the potential of the players. So what I used to like to do is create teams and trade up for their better players. So I've created a generic team and I've marked these players because they have a higher max. So this one has an 81, and I'm actually going to power him up, and then I'm going to grab one of their pitchers too, and I flag them just using a generic label so I know how to find them. So I'm going to grab this pitcher and this position player. Then I'm going to go over to my team and I'm going to identify players that have a low max. So this guy has a max of 55, so he sucks. Let's get rid of him. And then I need to find a position player, which are typically the pinch hitters, which are in the lower right-hand corner. And I'm going to flag him to get rid of him for a trade. Then you basically use both controllers to do a trade. Now, one thing that is nice about the game is, you can have unfair trades, but it does try to control for that. So I'm going to get my pitcher, swap him out, and then I will swap out the position player the same way. And this will allow you to have a team of guys that max out from 80 to 90. Another approach you can take is to hire and fire players. I've never found it terribly beneficial, but it is an option. It allows you to pick the player that you want, whether you're looking for someone that's running or you're looking for someone that has a higher maxed power-up. It is an option. But essentially, unless you have a game genie, these are all the strategies to do the one thing that really matters: beat the American Dreams in versus mode. Other than that, it's just about pride, beating that other player, whether it's your brother or your friend down the street. That's what we're doing. So those are all the strategies. Now let's get into the gameplay.
Hello everybody, Harry Cowie with you. And we're live at SNK Stadium, where the Chicago Cubs are going to play the American Dreams. SNK Stadium, that sounds like an accounting firm, doesn't it, Steve? Steve?
It's Jefferson.
Heathcliff
Webster.
Slocum? Now let's do this!
The gameplay is actually very good. The pitching, hitting, and fielding all are smooth and fitting for the time, and the batting mechanics make intuitive sense. Based on where you are in the batter's box and the way the ball hits the bat, you know whether you were jammed on the inside or if you really got a hold of it. In fact, after you hit a home run, you were greeted with a nice home run animation.
Chris Bryant's at the plate. Did you know that his name spelled backwards is Centerton? There's a swing and a drive. It may be. It could be. There he is. Holy cow.
Also, you have the ability to climb the wall and rob a home run, which is incredibly satisfying when you're playing against another player.
Now there's a drive. Way back. Appleba is going back. He climbed the wall and caught it. Appleba caught it. Holy cow.
In addition to this feature, you have the ability to dive and make jumping catches on defense.
Holy cow, what a catch!
Finally, the game gives you the convenience of the 10-run rule. Now, typically this is reserved for Little Leagues, but it's nice in this game because you can end a game quickly if you're really putting a shellacking on an opponent.
Hey Steve, what's going on? I didn't get to sing!
It's a 10-run rule, Harry. Game's over.
What? Hey Steve, what's going on? I didn't get to drink all my Budweisers.
By the way, Harry, Steve works for the White Sox now.
What Sox? Ah!
You know what, guys? I forgot forgot to power my players up. Let me just hop this back on, and I will do that before I forget. Ah! Son of a... I forgot to point out the most important thing about Baseball Stars. It was the first NES sports game to ever have a save feature, which is probably the most beneficial thing about the game, yet also the most detrimental. Every time you turn the game off, you have to hit reset and power, or you will lose your team. Everything you've done, everything you've created, gone. So if you see on the back of the cart this gold label on the back, it means you're going to have to do that every time you turn the game off. So I talked a lot about the positives of the game. What are the negatives? Well, one of the negatives is that it takes so long to power up your players. I've mentioned a lot of ways to mitigate that, but it's still a lingering issue with the game. Number two would be a lack of diversity. There are only white players in this game. Granted, back in the mid-'80s, late 80s, developers really weren't thinking about that, but that doesn't give them a pass. The third would be the battery backup save feature. If you own this game as a kid, chances are you probably lost your team at some point. Whether it was a lightning storm or your friend was just mad at you because you lost in league play and turned the game off, you probably lost your team. So all of this being said, how do I rate the game? Well, on a number of different dimensions, it's going to vary. Graphics, I think, were good at the time, so I would say a 5 out of 5. The gameplay was good, but not exceptional, so I would give that a 4 out of 5. From an innovation perspective, this game gets a 5 out of 5. It was super influential on even the games we play today. Replayability, absolutely 5 out of 5. I can pick this up, put in any roster I want, and play the game. Difficulty, I would say a 4 out of 5. You have to spend some time to get this game going and really fall in love with it. Everything else, music and presentation, I would say a 4 out of 5. So overall, well, I'm going to need some help with this one. Harry? 1 second, I've got an idea. Hey, there he is.
Gary, is it time to sing now?
Yeah, it's Jefferson. Harry, what do you rate this game?
I rate this game 4.5 ice cold Budweisers. Gary, can I sing now?
You got it, sir.
All right, let me hear you. A 1, a 2, a 3.
So you're probably saying, Jefferson, if this game was so great, why didn't they make a sequel? Well, they did. In 1992, 3 years after the NES release of Baseball Stars 1, SNK released Baseball Stars 2. And this game is disappointing, to say it mildly. For some, it might be an adequate game or even a good game, but for me, it was just super disappointing. You think about all the great foundation that the first game laid, and it just doesn't iterate off any of it. Essentially, the game is basically a carbon copy of the first game, but they dialed back a lot of the customization features.
Now dig up, stupid.
Super frustrating. There's less customization, so you can make a team, but the teams are basically templated out. You cannot change any of the players' names. There's just lots of problems with the game, and I would rather play the original. So it was just a super disappointing experience when I first played the game. The gameplay is similar. They didn't improve upon any of that. The only positive I can think of is they added diversity.
But what if you just rendered them a different color? You know, that would be cheap and quick.
But it is what it is. That you can select multiple stadiums. There's a couple small tweaks they made, but overall, I would just stick to the original. So to sum up, Baseball Stars was a very nostalgic moment of my childhood and playing video games, and I do think it is the best baseball game on the NES, even after a review later on in life. I think the game still does live today. There's multiple iterations of it, and you can see it in many games today like MLB The Show. So I think the legacy will continue to live on. So with that said, Baseball Stars, it's awesome, guys. Hey guys, if you like the video, click like below. If you'd like to see more videos like this, click subscribe, and I'll continue cranking these out. Please visit my website if you're interested in that, and also you can follow me on Facebook, the address below. Also, and finally, I wrote a book called The Parlay. It's available on Amazon, so check it out. Thanks guys, have a good one.